In case you haven't noticed, every demonstrator tells you to turn the lathe off before you move the tool rest. And every demonstrator moves the tool rest without turning the lathe off.
What tool are you using?
This is a skew. This particular process right here is called a planing cut. If you can imagine a hand plane moving down a stationary board, that's basically what it's doing.
That, hold on one sec. That lock on the tailstock, can you move that? It's facing straight towards you. Can you face? Does this move?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What? You couldn't see?
But you're blocking the camera.
Oh, okay.
That's better.
Basically, we're shaping it somewhat like a wine glass. Since I teach Sunday school in a Baptist church, I'll thank you all not to ask me how I'm intimately familiar with the shapes of wine glasses, okay? This is a bowl gouge. I found it a little bit better for shaping and carving things than a spindle gouge. Do what?
That he's making is a shear scrape at this point.
You tell me what the bottom one is, the top one.
Bottom one is the top one is so cold there's no way you can get set because it would roll it right out. If you roll it over and over and pull it up all the time, you got set and let it come to the set.
So you tell me what the top and the upper one.
That's the lower one.
As Pat said, this is a shear scrape. What I'm doing is putting the gouge where actually both wings are just about to touch, and then I rotate enough so that only the bottom wing is touching. So it's basically a scrape rather than a cut. We're getting dust instead of shaving.
Normally you would shear scrape with the handle down more, but I found myself doing, and you really didn't have the handle down here, did you?
Well,
You do a lot of,
You're really level.
you can vary that, it just depends who's working on curve. So, whatever works for you.
I found myself shear scraping horizontally, and then we get out there with the handle down.
if you take any of my instructions on conducting a demonstration, one of the first things we'll tell you is don't sand while you're doing it because it's boring to people. But unfortunately for this kind of a procedure, you have to sand at various stages because you run out of the ability to sand, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get further on down the line. So I just run a quick 150 grit over this just to smooth it out. Because what we want to do is leave this alone after we once get it cut. Now next I'm going to drill a hole for the opening in the globe of the goblet.
Is that a Forstner?
Pardon?
Is that a Forstner bit?
This is a Forstner bit.
Okay.
I'm going to use a Forstner bit to get started, and then I'm going to use a twist bit, and I'll explain why in just a minute. When I drill on the lathe, I usually only drill at about 200, less than 300 RPM. It just seems to work better. Now, I've watched people on YouTube, and they drill the thing just really cranking, but I'm not. This is what I've found to be the best way to do it. Now, the reason I'm using the Forstner bit, starting off with a Forstner bit, is because it has this sharp point, this sharp edge on it, and it fits right in the dimple that was made by the live center. Now, what I'm going to switch to is a twist bit. This happens to be, this is a 1-inch twist bit. I'm drilling a 1-inch hole in there. My philosophy on hollowing is if you're going to take the wood off, you might as well take as much as you can off with a drill bit. It's a whole lot easier than trying to dig it out with a gouge. This happens to be a twist bit that also has a Morse taper on the end. And this is something that dawned on me one day, and it might be worth the price of admission. This is a O-ring. You can buy a whole box of O-rings at Harbor Freight. But if you decide you want a hole in here, let's say we want a hole about 1 5/8 of an inch, we set our O-ring at that 1 5/8 of an inch, then we don't have to worry about it drilling too far or not drilling far enough. Now when drilling, you want to drill a little bit and then stop and clear the bit. You ain't lived until you've stuck a bit in a piece of wood. And it really gets discouraging. And I have had to absolutely destroy some expensive wood just because I got a drill bit stuck in it. Another handy dandy little tip is keep a wire brush at hand and clean off your bit. You should do that with the other one as well, because then you don't have to stop and clean it off next time you use it.
Preferably brass.
Pardon?
Preferably brass brush.
This happens to be steel. I don't know if a brass brush would do any better. It's the one I always use. Like I said, the reason for using the Forstner bit to get started is because it has that spur ending on it. The sharp little point here that goes right into that nub that's already there. And then the twist bit is more of a 60-degree angle. So instead of having a flat bottom with a hole in it, you've got a nice little kind of cut out spot. And it's a lot easier to take the shape of that glass on the inside, which should emulate the shape on the outside in order to do the hollowing.
So it's just easier to finish the cup at the bottom from the twister, from the
Right.
twist bit, and you don't have the wings of the Forstner bit.
Absolutely. You'd
Digging
have,
in
you'd have
past
to
the
go
flat.
quite a bit deeper to get that point out, and also to make it. Now, if you're making a cup that you want with a flat bottom, Forstner bit's the way to go.
Right.
But in the case of a wine glass where you want it, the bottom to be
Mhm.
shaped like that, then this is the thing you want to use. Okay. In my lathe at home,
Can I help you with that, or
I'll
you
do
got
it.
it?
I've already enlisted
All right.
the help of
Got some muscle.
some muscle here. Sit up front. Now, as it sits right here, I'm going to have to reach across like this and see if I can see in it and do the hollowing. But by moving the banjo and the tool rest and the head stock down to the other end, oops, we just ran out of the camera.
Well,
I forgot about
probably
that.
fix that. We can try to fix that anyhow. That's pretty close.
Practicing this at home, I'm not used to having to step over all these wires and things.
We make it more challenging whenever possible.
Come on over to my shop.
Okay, now I'm going to be hollowing at a pretty good speed. I think I've turned up to around 1500 RPM. The tool I'm using is a Hunter number 5. This is one of Mike Hunter's first hollowing tools. And I made a note here on my handle to remind you that Mike Hunter himself is going to be the demonstrator at the Hot Springs Club on the 12th of February. A lot of us will be going, so if you'd like to see Hunter, he'll be demonstrating his new tools and how they work and everything like that. And he usually gives you a pretty good break on something you might want to buy. In case you're not familiar with Hunter, he's the one who's developed this. And if you look in any of the catalogs or magazines or anything, you'll see tools that, actually Hunter tools, and also other tools like Jameson hollowing tools, hollowing system, several other systems that use Hunter cutters. This is not a scraper like a anything. It is a cutter. See what they look like. You can't sharpen this guy, but it's definitely handy for hollowing. Okay, now I've got to reach around there and turn on the lathe. There we go. Oh.
Have you ever worn one of those carbides out?
Pardon?
Have you worn one of those Hunter carbides out?
No. I dropped it on the floor and broke it, but
That doesn't count.
I wore the edge right off.
Did you?
now this is that little light thing that Cindy Drozda sells, and Robert Gray demonstrated how we can make one out of, cobble something together out of some spare parts. What we're going to try to do here is Pat's going to hold the camera and let you see inside. One of the downsides in demonstrating any kind of hollowing is that the audience can't see. We don't have x-ray vision so we can see inside there. In fact, usually the person doing the hollowing can't see inside. They're just flying blind. So this light gives the operator a little bit of an advantage, and it also hopefully we'll be able to set it up so he can see if I can stay out of the way. He may have to just kind of waller around with it.
come up with one. I've got one that I took off of mine.
Did you knock it loose? Did you move it?
Yeah.
But it didn't come off and fly over.
Not yet. But that's why we've got the screen.
Screen has,
You want me to you want me to do a
Clyde.
Clyde?
Well, but Robert has to be sitting over here.
Yeah, Robert, you're not in the right place.
I need the signature, that little mark over at the top.
I didn't get in there right. A little compressed air is nice every once in a while. Now I wanted to show something else just for the interest's sake. Anybody seen one of these? I mean, there's some people who have them. This is called a Halloween King. It's a tool made by a fellow named Paul Crabtree. Although I think he's retired, he's an old guy. He talked to me a couple of years ago about getting out of the business. Wondered if I knew anybody who wanted to buy it. I don't know if he's found somewhere or not. But anyway, I first saw this 10, 11 years ago when I was in Washington, and I went out to his shop. He lived in Tacoma at the time. It's got this outrigger on here so that it takes the torque out of hollowing. And then it's got this little spring gadget here that you can adjust a distance away from this. It's
The scraper.
yeah, it's a scraper. It's not a carbide. Anyway, that distance, hypothetically at least, is the thickness of the wall when the spring is no longer deflected down. I think you'll be able to see that on the overhead there. This was just something I like to introduce this tool every once in a while, and if you want to know more about it, come on over to the shop and I'll put one in your hands and you can play with it. And you can see that the spring is being deflected down. Room to move in here. But as I get closer than I go, spinning it down. There's almost always a little nub at the bottom, and this is handy dandy to take that little nub. You can see that the spring is just almost allowing me to get in there completely. And we're going to sand the inside here too. Like I said, on any of these pieces where you change the axis, you've got to do all of your finishing from one part before you move on to another part. Okay, that's enough of that. We're going to call that bowl done. And turn off the little light. And if I could have the assistance of my heavyweights again. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't know if many of you remember when we had an IRD by Mike Mahoney. Something that he mentioned that I kind of took to heart at that time is that any time you can have your tailstock in contact with your workpiece adds just that little measure of safety. And he's the kind of a guy that turns 1,500 bowls a year because he's got a demand for them. He's a professional wood turner. And he said he attributed his safety that he's enjoyed over the years to one of the fact that he does this, that any time you can have the tailstock in contact with your moving piece, you're better off.
Is that a piece of wood on there?
Pardon?
Is that a piece of wood?
It's a piece of wood, yeah. It's just a turned piece of wood, and I've put threads in it to, and we could use this guy if we wanted to. I mean, it would be fine. I've seen people using tennis balls or handball balls or something like that.
Why do you use the wood?
Why?
Why do you use the wood cone? As opposed to the metal cone?
Just because
Make
it's,
the wood cones any size you want.
yeah, that and the fact that wood against wood is better than metal against wood.
All right.
Just easier on it. Okay, the next section, we're just going to draw a line here. taking it off axis yet. And that'll be the next step after this one, but we want to first establish the shaft here, this part. So basically I'm just cutting a code. Now this little feature is optional. You don't have to put a extra ring on there. Cove like this is why, for turners like me, on the 8th day, God created negative rake scrapers. Because in a little tight space like this, a gouge can get out of hand, but the scraper is very forgiving. I'm using calipers to measure my diameter here.
Going down to about a ½ inch diameter right now?
I'm going to a ½ inch. We're almost there. Well, like I said, at each stage, I want to slow down and sand. The reason I made the little cove the size I did is because it fits my finger.
You would normally sand that to higher than 150.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Now then, we're ready for the offset part. Obviously we can't use this if we're being offset. What I've done here, I've marked on my, or I've got my chuck to jaw number 1. The jaws are all labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I've got a little line that I've already made here on my jaw, and I'm going to make a corresponding line here on my workpiece, so that hopefully I can get this back and you can pretty close to the position it came out of. We're going to take and loosen this chuck. just enough so that I can bend this piece. That's too much. About like that. And this gap is probably less than 1/8 of an inch. And the chuck is all that's holding this, and we've hamstrung it by moving our workpiece off to one side a little bit. You can see how it rotates. So the chuck's got to be tight, and the touch has to be light. Light touch. And I always forget to mark this before I get to it. So but I'm just going to kind of hand draw a guide around here so I'll know where I need to stop. Now basically what I'm going to do is cut a cove. Those of you who took the Learn to Turn class, we tried to hammer into your heads. This is a spindle gouge. This is the flute, this upper part here. The flute is totally open in this case. If I were to turn it all the way to 3 o'clock or all the way to 9 o'clock, it would be totally closed. So if you remember from taking Learn to Turn, we started out with the flute open and we went all the way to closed in order to make a bead. We made a bead like this or a bead like this. And then we told you that if you want to make a cove, you do just the opposite. You start out with the flute completely closed, in this case to 3 o'clock, and you go down to 12. And you go to the other side and go to the other side at 9 o'clock and go to 12. So that's what we're going to do here with this offset. Make sure that it's not going to bash into the tool rest. And as scary as it is, and if you've never done offset turning, it's a little scary to start with. So you naturally start out with light cuts. But then I've seen a lot of times, and I've been guilty of it too, oh, this is easy, and that's when you knock it off the lathe. So just keep in mind the light cuts, starting at 3 o'clock. Most of you know who Cindy Drozda is. She's an extremely good demonstrator. I saw a demonstration of hers at SWAT one time, and she was going along turning something and she blew it up. And she says, "Now isn't that what you all came for, to see the experts screw up?" And she just casually went over and picked up another piece that she'd already made as backup, stuck it on the lathe and kept on going. I mean, that was an instructive part. So now I hope you're not wishing to see me screw up anymore, but it may happen anyway. First, this is kind of slow going. And the reason I call this a skill building thing is because if you're ham-handed and go at everything like you killing snakes, you're going to have to change your ways. Starting flute completely closed, completely open. And now you don't climb up the other side when you're doing a cove. You go to the opposite side and leave what you've done in the middle. We just keep going like this, because this has got to be a 1/2 inch tube. some additional input, after you get going on this, your mind ignores the flopping part, and you focus totally on the part that you're cutting on, and it gets easier. Like I say, after a while it gets so easy to do that you have a tendency to just hog it off and get it done, and that's when you mess up. That whining sound is vibration because we don't have any support on this end.
When you're cutting the cove, why don't you climb out the other side with them?
It just doesn't work. Try it, and you only try it once.
Is it because it tears out, or does it just get ugly? When
It
catches and
it
breaks.
catches and breaks.
Okay.
Flies.
Al, what's the angle of your cut?
What?
Your cutter, what's the angle you got on that? 60?
Probably. I think it was 60 last time I checked it. Yeah. This has got a fairly long wings on it. It's
Fingernail
but this is a fingernail grind, but it's just a half-inch spindle gouge.
Good. Thank you.
Let's go to our savior here, a negative rake scraper. Is everybody familiar with negative rake scraper, what it means? A negative rake scraper is just an ordinary scraper, but the other side has been carved away first. For some reason, it gives you a lot of advantage and it almost never catches. I've converted virtually all of my scrapers to negative rake scrapers. A skew will work as a negative rake scraper if you just hold it like this, because you've got both sides cut. When you sharpen this, I sharpen it like this with the wheel grinding this way, and it puts a nice little burr on there, and it's the burr that actually does the cutting.
You sharpen the bottom of the negative rake.
Yeah.
And it causes the burr to be on the upper
Yes.
surface.
Right. Now, I would recommend that if you do, the first time you try to do this, make your diameters of your shaft about a half-inch. Now, I've seen people that would try to make them a 1/4 inch or 3/8 or 3/16, something like that. That gets pretty dicey, especially with this thing flopping around up here. And again, before we go further, now you notice I turn down the speed when I go to sand. You don't get more sanding done at high speed. In fact, you get less done because it tends to skip. So if you'll cut it down to about 700-800 RPM from the 1500 we were working at, you'll get better results with your sanding. Alrighty, now we're ready to return this thing back to. Hope they didn't break. I'm going to use this little cone to guide it back into place. And again, make sure that it is tight in chuck.
So you put it back to where you started?
Yes.
back to right where I started. So here we are at this point. So I'm going to make my bottom about here. That'll give me plenty of room to cut it off. So from about here all the way up to this point, basically it's what you would call hogging off. And I like to use a bowl gouge for this. For me, it just is more friendly and accomplishes what you want to do faster. But again, resist the temptation to be overly aggressive. Now for those of you that fancy the use of easy wood tools, which are basically just scrapers, you can use that, especially the square scraper here in this, to get a nice uniform For those people who like easy wood tools, there's no reason why you couldn't use easy wood tools for this whole process.
Can you start the lathe? I want to see what the finish looks like after that easy wood tool.
It looks like it's been scraped.
Okay, thank you.
Again, this little feature down here at the above the base is not necessary. If you don't want to use it, you don't need to. And then this is going to be the base, and we're going to make our base, the diameter of the base, just a little bit smaller than the diameter of the globe. Almost there. Also, those of you who took the Learn to Turn class recall that in the very first part, when you were start working with 2x4s, just between centers and just really making chips, you were advised to, even if you're right-handed, you typically hold your gouge like that, and you were instructed to switch hands and get used to using it from the other way, because there are sometimes just things that you can't do like this. Or if you're left-handed, there are things that you can't do like this. So it's good to be able to switch hands. You're not going to have to write your signature with your non-favored side, but the idea of being able to use both hands on the with the gouges is something that is desirable. Not quite there yet. I did a version of this demonstration for the Hot Springs Club when we were still under the ravages of the COVID. So there's something intimidating about a video camera. I got a lot more catches than I did when I have a live audio. Sand. Now I like to take these edges down a little bit, and I probably would, if I were taking more time, I'd probably take them down just a little bit more. They're kind of hanging out there in space. Let's go ahead and get this tidied off. This is just a 1/16 inch parting tool. And what we do is go in here, clear out some material. Here we want to make a concave bottom on this. We don't want it to sit flat on a flat surface, because it will never, the flat surfaces will never talk to one another. But if it's a ring, and if you look, any glass or cup or vessel in your house that contains liquid will have that concave bottom. And slow this down a little bit. We're going to take this off.
Very nice.
Now, this is, like I say, this is the cup with the eccentric stem. And you saw how I got that. I just moved it slightly in its position. We didn't actually change the axis from here. I wanted to show you the next step to this. Would be to do like this. And I gave you the information in your handout on the back page. But what you have to do with this is put your workpiece between centers, finish your globe and the little jewel beneath it, and then cut the globe away so that you have a big flat surface out here. I can find it. Here we are. So what we did was set up two axes so that the entire thing rotated like this. Then we cut off that, turned this, then we put it back on the center axis to turn these parts, and then we cut the top down and glued the globe back on like this. So don't try to do this just by shifting the axis on the in the chuck like I showed. Any questions about that? I've got several of my practice pieces here. They are basically going to be firewood if I take them home. So if anybody is the least bit interested in doing this, you're welcome to take this home and do with it. In other words, have something to sit there and look at.
Okay,
So-
we have a question of why do you take the bowl off first?
Because what you're going to have here just a piece of wood like this.
Right?
Okay, you're going to turn the globe on this end, and then you're going to turn this whole thing where the axis is way out here at the edge, so that it's going like this. You don't have anything to hook to if you've got that globe turned, and you can't turn a globe once you've got all these. Well, Pat said he could, but basically, what you've got to do is turn the globe, get it all finished out, cut it off,
But
leave a
it
little
worked
nut,
on your little one, so why does it not work on the other one?
because you're putting both axes between the centers, and that rim on that globe is not going to be sturdy enough to hold it. Trust me, it won't work that way.
Do you
I took your word for it.
do you have a center you could put on, drive center you could put on that lathe?
A drive center.
A drive center?
Take the chuck off and put a drive spur on it.
Oh,
Drive
yeah,
spur?
yeah. In fact,
Mount that on there real quick.
You can. It doesn't
Like that.
Well,
Show, it's, because it's off center on both ends. With the little goblet you just did,
Oh,
was
on
off
both
center only
sides.
on one end.
On one end,
Right,
the other one's
right.
gonna be on both ends.
She's
I
got
get
it, she's got it now,
I get it.
she's got it.
Sorry, I'm just dumb.
No,
Pack it down. Look at that one.
he's turning crankshafts is what he's doing.
Sorry, I don't know what that is. Yeah.
now, just this one will go real fast, so I won't necessarily. I'm not going to keep you a little too late here. We still got 5 minutes. I can make it. No, it'll be more than 5 minutes, but not that much more. All right. This is for the weed pot.
Okay, I got it.
This is a traditional weed pot. This one is a wonky weed pot. It holds the weeds just like that. By weeds, I mean the things that you pull out of your garden, not the things that they sell at the cannabis stores.
Right.
Real fun.
So basically what I'm going to do is show you how to make this. This can be made totally between the centers, between spur drive and live center.
Right.
Wanna hold them? Pass them around?
Oh, it's off, this top is off, put down from this.
It's wonky. Head knocker,
My brain is all See how this is not centered in the middle of this, but in this one it's centered in the middle. See, it took you a while too, okay.
It's wonky on steroids.
It does. It does.
So do you have a tap for that, what is that, 1 in 10? Hal, do you have a tap for the 1 in 10 thread on the tailstock?
Mm-hmm.
Is that 1 in 10 on that also?
I think so. I just bought a 3/4 inch tap at Lowe's and it worked perfect.
Okay.
Does the weed pot just have a hole drilled in it, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's all. It doesn't have, it's not hollow.
Yeah.
It's not hollow.
You can holler if you want to.
It's a little challenging.
when you were using your hunter tool a while ago, were you holding the cutter at 45 degrees?
When I bought the, I actually bought it from Mike Hunter himself, and he told me to make a mark right here, so that it puts the, if the mark is up, it puts the cutter at that angle.
Which is about 45 degrees.
Yeah,
Yeah, about 45.
Because if it's straight across, it's going to catch every time.
not too bad. I roll it pretty good like that, just so you stay below center.
Right.
It'll work pretty good.
Okay.
Okay, now, I'm starting out this between centers, spur drive, and live center. I'm going to make a tenon on this. No, I'm not. I'm going to make a tenon right here. You're saying, why is he making that tenon that high? Hold on. My little gauge.
The fastest is up on the end of the station.
You what?
That's breaking.
Are you looking for the calipers?
Yeah. No, my, it's a wood gauge.
Oh, okay.
It says go and no go gauge.
I haven't seen that.
Don't forget that. Anyway, I made a tenon here. Now I'm going to take this and deviate it just about. If you can see the little circle that is made by this, okay, I'm going to deviate it about to the edge of that circle. I'm going to start right about here to make my spigot or my stem. See, you reach a point where you ignore this floppy part and you just go with the part that's turning natural. You want to cut that down to about an inch or a little less in diameter. smooth that out a little bit. Losing my sandpaper is something I do all the time. Now, I've got an offset spigot on this little pot. How do I drill a hole in it? It sits like that instead of straight up. Do I take it and put a hand drill in it? Do I drill it in a drill press? Almost any way you do it, except on the lathe, you're going to get it off some way. Unless you put a tenon that goes along with this axis. What we're going to do is put a tenon on this end here. Now, I'm going to take the spur drive out. And install this guy. Like so. Then we're going to take a 3/8 drill bit, that wire attached to it. Turn the speed down to about 200. Drill a hole. That way the hole is going to be right through that shaft. Remember, you don't go more than about a ½ inch at a time without clearing your bit. Now, I'm telling you, if you ever stick a drill bit in a piece of wood, like that, yeah, but really stick it in there.
I know, been there, done that.
It'll make you say bad words, even if you don't usually say bad words. Huh? There you go.
That means he knows all the good ones. Like that one trying to stick right now.
There. Now keep it on. There you go.
What size is your drill bit?
3/8. Cherry.
And that's about 4 inches in there, so that's about to the middle of this. Like I say, that's what people come to demos for, is to see the demonstrator screw up, turned on. Everybody clean your drill bit. Oh, I know what I forgot. Forgot my handsaw. Oh well. We can
Part him off.
just part it off. If I can find my parting tool. We're gonna part it off right here where I first made that tenon. Because this tenon is in sync with this, and we want it in sync with this part. Throw away your waste piece, install the pot in the chuck, and proceed to turn the body. Do you want me to do that, or you had enough, seen enough?
I don't think we have enough.
Okay. I did want
It'll only take him a couple of seconds to
Okay,
turn the
we
body.
can do it.
All he's gonna do is roll this, he'll roll these edges,
Okay.
then part off.
I did want to mention a couple of things. If you get crazy, and there's a reference in your handout to some things, or to a individual named Barbara Dill. Go to her website or to her YouTube videos or whatever, and you'll see all kinds of interesting stuff. Basically, what this is, hold it up there, stay between centers.
Okay.
Create two axes, one here and one here, both of them off center. Then you turn a cove, a bead, and a cove. Then you move it to the other axis, turn a bead, a cove, and a bead. And you get out with something really crazy looking like this. And you'll get fascinated. I mean, it's very fascinating. And then if you're the kind of person who sees spaceships and aliens and things like that, try something like this. This has got 4 axes. You divide this up into 4 pieces and change axis each time.
You have that book I showed you earlier, Hal?
Huh?
You have that little white book?
Yeah. I have Barbara Dill's book here. I'd like to show you. We have it in the library. Where is it?
No, this one's my personal copy.
Okay.
3 or 4?
It's 4.
Here's her earlier one.
That's on the center.
If you
This is round on the
find any interest in
That's one.
doing offset,
Two, three, four.
I got you.
And they're, you're
you'll
spiraling,
be
the axes are
inspired by
twisted.
going to our website. One other thing, this is the challenge for next time. So I'm encouraging. Like I said, I've got a bunch of throwaways here. If you'd like to take a piece home to hold up and say, I think I can do that, then come and grab it. I'll be glad for you to have it to inspire with it. So, anyway, I
Okay, do
appreciate
they have to
your.
be that small?
You know, maybe we
Yeah.
don't need to use one ahead.
So I think I should do light out of this, that would be, okay.
Those 3 axes, they cut his axes off, but I leave them on this, so you know what.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
But this one right here, this is on
This
3
one
axes.
does carry.
you don't really want to teach this structure. Just because.
Let's put it in the drinks and see, it's like rocky or. It's all different order. Well, you could, you're doing deep cuts, the first 50 miles. This is on, that's on 3 axes, this is on 2 axes. On Thanksgiving,
Exercise.
that's like section 1 and 2. I never did 3 and 4, and I've done a bunch.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Hal.
Al, that was great.
Thank you.
That'll make
I don't wanna think we're at all.
Green, where green?
I'm gonna think
One of
won't
them
be
has
bad days.
a water carriage, like it's 15 miles between one of those.
good.
And the only one-
Anyway,
and it says-
this was in my life.